Today, we're going to go beyond the veil. We're going to peer into the abyss and ask ourselves what horrors could be so bad that even a chaos god would turn away in disgust. From the darkest pits of the warp, the Dark Eldar come, pale-skinned, sadistic, and with a lust for torture. They raid the material realm, snatching victims from sleeping worlds and dragging them back to the dark city of Kamara to be used in unspeakable ways. If left unchecked, they will drain an entire world of its population and leave nothing but corpses in their wake. Join me today as we dive into the soul-rending hellscape that is a Dark Eldar raid and explore the minds of the most sadistic faction in all of Warhammer. Let's get grim. Before we delve into the heart of the matter, it's important to note that this isn't just some sadistic fun. This isn't even about power or conquest. A Dark Eldar raid has only two purposes. It's about gathering slaves, and it's about inflicting pain. The Dark Elves were once High Elves, a people with a long history of magic and martial prowess, isolationist but undeniably powerful. Then Slaanesh came for them, worming its way into their hearts and twisting them into something horrific. Where once there was beauty, now there is only grotesque decadence. Where there was pride and power, now there is addiction and despair. And so it is that the Dark Eldar exist to serve the Prince of Pleasure, and that means they must bring him gifts. When it comes to pleasing Slaanesh, gifts of flesh are particularly appreciated. For that reason, the Dark Eldar conduct regular raids across the galaxy, taking captives back to Kamarok where they can be traded or worse. In terms of numbers, the scale of a Dark Eldar raid depends on the resources of the raiding force. Typically, these incursions consist of at least a few hundred warriors, though larger forces consisting of thousands are not unheard of. After all, the Dark Eldar love to inflict suffering, and they love to do it in style. These raids don't target entire armies. That would be too easy. And besides, there's no sport in killing well-armed opponents. No, the Dark Eldar prefer to strike at settlements, snatching up defenseless men, women, and children and tearing them from their homes. There is no warning when the Dark Eldar strike. One moment, their victims are asleep in their beds, enjoying the safety of their world, and the next, they are being dragged screaming onto a raider ship. In the blink of an eye, entire cities can be emptied, planets stripped of their populations and left to die. Raiders move fast, striking hard and disappearing before any kind of organized defense can be mounted. Their prey is herded into pens aboard the raiders, sometimes left to fight each other for sport, often tortured as a form of entertainment. The more valuable captives are kept for later, while the weak and expendable are simply discarded, left to die in the most agonizing ways possible. Sometimes the Dark Eldar leave behind small numbers of their captives, just enough to carry tales of the raid back to the wider galaxy. Tales that will spread fear and revulsion in equal measure. These survivors are marked with the Dark Eldar's symbol, a twisted, sadistic mockery of the Imperial Aquila. They are living advertisements proclaiming the Dark Eldar's arrival to anyone who sees them. When the victims are gathered, the raid is far from over. The Dark Eldar then set about ensuring that their captives are in peak condition for when they arrive back in Kamarog. This is known as fattening, and it involves a disgusting combination of drugs, implants, and cybernetics. Anyone captured by the Dark Eldar is subjected to terrible experiments, often having their nervous systems rewired to make them more susceptible to pain. They are given implants that allow the Dark Eldar to monitor their health, prolonging their life without addressing the horrible injuries they have already suffered. Victims are often forced to take drugs that warp their minds, leaving them broken and traumatized, perfect for sale to the highest bidder. If the captives survive the journey back to Kamara, that is, those that don't are thrown out of airlocks in the upper atmosphere of the Dark City, stripped of their skin to make the process of selling them easier. Once the captives are ready, they are brought into the city through the webway, a trans-dimensional network that links the Dark Eldar's scattered settlements. Kamarag is divided into different districts, but all are united by one thing, an obsession with pain and suffering. Some captives will be sold directly from the webway, while others will be taken deeper into the city, passed from one deranged noble to the next, each eager to add to the captive's misery. Most victims are too valuable to kill straight away, so instead they are taken to one of Kamara's many pleasure quarters, where their tormentors indulge their darkest desires. The Dark Eldar are depraved, and their idea of fun includes ripping out fingernails, branding victims with red-hot pokers, and even sewing their mouths open so that they cannot scream. Some captives are turned into living trophies, strapped to chariots like horses, forced to drag their masters around the city. Others are locked in cages, paraded through the streets for all to see. There are no rules in a Dark Eldar raid, only the desire to cause pain and the thrill of the hunt. Now, you might be wondering why the Dark Eldar engage in these raids at all. Why not just stay in Kamara and cause pain there? Well, that's because a big part of the pleasure derived from a Dark Eldar raid is the anticipation, the chase, the terror experienced by the victims. You see, causing pain is one of the Dark Eldar's paths to power. Back in their home dimension, feeding Slaanesh is relatively easy. All they have to do is indulge in perversion and excess. But in the material universe, things are different. Because the Dark Eldar are addicted to Slaanesh's power, they need to constantly feed him. Otherwise, their psychic abilities begin to wane, leaving them vulnerable to the forces of chaos. The only problem is that Slaanesh is already incredibly powerful, which means his servants must become increasingly extreme to keep up their powers. So they raid, pillage, and torture, always seeking new and better ways to cause pain. All of this is done to maintain their powers and to feed their Dark Prince, and it never, ever stops. I think we can all agree that the Dark Eldar are pretty messed up, but where did they go wrong? What made them turn to such extreme measures to gain power? Well, their story goes back to the birth of Slaanesh, a time when the Dark Eldar were still high elves. At that time, the race was called the Eldari, and they were known throughout the galaxy for their grace, power, and beauty. But that all changed when the god of excess was born. You see, Slaanesh was conceived during the War in the Stars, a galactic conflict that pitted the Old Ones against the Necrons. The Eldari fought alongside the Old Ones, but they were drawn to the intoxicating pleasures of war, the taste of victory, and the thrill of battle. It was heady stuff, but it wasn't enough. The Eldari craved more, and so they delved into sorcery, seeking to enhance their psychic abilities. This led them to the discovery of the Webway, a trans-dimensional network that allowed them to travel quickly and easily across the galaxy. But the Eldari weren't the only ones who discovered the Webway. The Necrons did too, and soon the two races were fighting over control of the network. The Eldari had the upper hand, but they were cocky and overconfident, and that led to their downfall. In one battle, the Eldari prince dared to attack the Necron lord, only to be captured himself. As punishment, the Necrons chained him up and left him in the Webway, slowly draining his life force and warping his mind. This was a grave mistake on the part of the Necrons, as it turned out, because the Eldari prince was actually Slaanesh in disguise. As he slowly drained, his psychic powers grew, and when he finally broke free of his bonds, he was more powerful than the Eldari had ever been. He took the name Slaanesh, the Prince of Pleasure, and he offered the Eldari a chance to join him in his quest for ultimate power. Most of the Eldari refused, but a few were tempted by the promise of greater power and unfathomable pleasures. And so it was that the first Dark Eldar were born, forever enslaved to the whims of their new master. To appease Slaanesh, they began raiding the material universe, taking captives back to their homeworld of Kamara, where they could be used for nefarious purposes. The raids became more and more intense, more brutal and more frequent, as the Dark Eldar grew more and more addicted to Slaanesh's power. The captives of these raids were tortured and mutilated, and their screams of pain and agony fueled Slaanesh's growth. As he grew more powerful, the Dark Eldar found themselves having to resort to more and more extreme measures to keep him happy. And so it continues to this day, a never-ending cycle of pain, suffering, and addiction. That's all for this video, folks. I hope you enjoyed my exploration of the Dark Eldar, one of Warhammer's most sadistic factions. Now, go out into the galaxy and be nice to each other.